Hey, my name is Izzy. This is Rolling Virtual Cards coming at you with another Magic the Gathering video. This time going over the colorless cards in Modern Horizons 3. I say colorless with quotations because they're not actually colorless. They cost color, but they're devoid, so Scryfall makes them colorless. So there's a lot of these, and we're just going to get into it and just tell you my opinions. Corrupted Shapeshifters, 3 and a white, blue for a star Eldrazi Shapeshifter with Devoid, so it's no color. So it has no color. When into the battlefield, it either becomes your choice of a 3/3 flyer, a 2/5 with Vigilance, or a 0/12 defender. I think there's a lot of leeway with this card, but I don't think it's doing a lot. I think it's a little too weak. I like the choice. Maybe if it was a 3-drop, it might see more play. Maybe Popper uses it as a control piece, but I'm not 100% sure. Depth Defiler is 3 and 2 blue for a 3/5 Eldrazi with Devoid, and Kicker colorless, so you had to pay colorless for it. When you cast this spell, choose one. If it was kicked, choose both instead. Return target creature to its owner's hand. Target player draws 2 cards and discards a card. I think this does a lot, but I think it's still too slow in Modern to do anything. I think Eldrazi decks will like this in Commander. Drown Yard Lurker is 7 generic for a 7/7 Eldrazi. Trilobite with Vigilance, and whenever you cast or cycle it, you get a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token with sacrifice this creature, add a colorless. Cycle, 2 and a blue. So yeah, you can play this turn 3, you can dump this to just get your little ramp out, or you can play this turn 7 or later to just get this big 7/7 out, and your little guy. Again, I think Eldrazi decks will like this in Commander. Emrakul's Messenger is 1 and a white, 1 and a blue for 2/1 Eldrazi Fairy Rogue with Devoid and Flying, and whenever you draw your second card each turn, you make a 0/1. I think this is great in Commander because you're making all those 0/1s in an Eldrazi token deck that you want to make those 0/1s. Being able to draw your second card each turn on everyone's turn with a specific effects and stuff that let you do that. Whenever your opponent draw a card, whenever your opponent does something, or whenever a player does something, draw a card. This could really help you with that stuff, getting to draw a lot of cards. And getting a lot of 0/1s that can be used for mana. Hope and Ender Coddle is 2 and a blue for a 2/2 Eldrazi Snake with Devoid and Flash. And whenever you cast a spell, counter target spell an opponent controls unless they pay 1. I love this card, again, in Eldrazi decks in Commander, because you can just replace one of your counter spells with this guy and probably do the same job, plus get a 2/2 flyer. Kozilek's Unsealing is 2 and a blue for an enchant with Devoid, and when you cast a creature spell with mana value 4, 5, 6, or at 4, 5, or 6, you create 2 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature tokens with sacrifice this creature at 2. Whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 7 or greater, draw 3 cards. This card's crazy. It's a $2 freaking uncommon because it does everything, guys. In Eldrazi decks or high CMC decks in Modern, this either gets you 2 0/1s that you can use to ramp out further, or you just cast your big Eldrazi because you're playing Eldrazi Tron, and oh look, I draw 3 cards. And then don't get me started this in Commander. This in Commander is gross. It's gonna be great. I love this card in so many ways. Does everything. Null Drifter is 7 for a 4/4 Eldrazi Elemental. Whenever you cast this spell, draw 2 cards flying. Annihilator 1, evoke 2 and a blue. This card is great. It is just that same the evoke has the same evoke cost as the card that does this. I forget the name. The other, I think it's a Drifter. But this is the null version. This is the Eldrazi version. Because a lot of these Eldrazi cards are just reprints of other cards. Which I love. I love what they went for there. But yeah, dude, a 7 for a 4/4 with Flying and Annihilator 1, that's expensive. It's a lot. But, it triggers this. So you get to draw 3 cards, and then you cast it and you draw 2 cards, and then it's got Evoke. So you can cast it and draw 2 cards for 3. So, this is great because, early game, you're just I'm going to draw 2 cards. And late game, you're here's my 7/7 with Flying and or here's my 4/4 with Annihilator 1 and Flying. It's going to see play in any format that it can. Petrifying Meddler is 4 and a blue for a 4/5 Eldrazi with Devoid. Whenever you cast a spell, tap up to one target creature and put a stun counter on it reach. I don't like it. Again, maybe Eldrazi decks in like Pauper or Commander will run it, but eh. Twisted Riddle Keeper is 8 generic for a 5/5 Eldrazi. Sphinx emerge 5, a colorless, and a blue. So the way this works is you sacrifice a creature. So let's say you sacrifice a 5-drop. This costs 1 colorless and a blue because it's reduced by the cost mana value. So, yeah, and then you get it for 1 and a blue, for a colorless and a blue, which is pretty good. And then you have whenever you cast a spell, tap up to 2 target permanents, put a stun counter on each of them, flying. Yeah, again, I think this is too expensive for Modern. Like, even if you sack like a 3-drop, like, okay, now instead of 7, it's 4. Like, that's still expensive. But I like it in Commander. It's like you stun drop people, and then you get a nice 5/5 with Flyer. I think it's fine there. Ugin's Binding is gross and inexpensive card again. 2 and a blue for an instant with Devoid. Return target non-land permanent to you don't control to its owner's hand. Whenever you cast a colorless spell with mana value 7 or greater, you may exile Ugin's Binding from your graveyard. When you do, return each non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. Yeah. It's an instant, but yeah, when you cast 7 greater, you may exile Ugin's Binding from your graveyard. When you do, return each non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. This is a Cyclonic Rift. If you cast a 7 or higher. So, that's gross. I love it. It's going to do you use it first as a bounce back on one card, and then you just drop your Eldrazi. Like, this is going to see play in, like, mono blue Tron. Unfathomable Truths is 4 and a blue for an instant with Devoid. Draw 3 cards and create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn. Creature tokens, a spawn. It's fine. You create 3 of them for 5. It's fine. Maybe in a token doubling strategy in Commander, where like, oh look, I'm gonna get 6 of them. That's pretty good. Okay, now to the red versions. I think they kind of have them organized, which means there's no black or white if that would be the case. Eldrazi Linebreaker is 1, a colorless, and a red for a 3/3 Eldrazi Devoid. With Devoid and Trample, at the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature you control gets gains haste and gets +X+0 until end of turn. X of the Eldrazi you control. This is for the Eldrazi decks, guys, in Modern. And I mean, Commander, this is great, but in Modern, being able to like play all those little like spawns and go, oh look, I got like 10 of them. Let's give that guy +10/+0. Same thing with Commander doing that. Fanged Flames is 1 and a red for a sorcery with Devoid. When it deals 4 damage to target creature Planeswalker. If that creature or Planeswalker would die, this would exile instead. It's fine. I don't love it. Frogmire Enforcer is 7 generic for a 4/4 Frogmire Mirror. Not Mire. Frogmere. So Prototype 3 and a red, you can just cast it as a 2/2. Or for 7, you can cast it as a 4/4. It has affinity for artifacts either way, so you can either cast it for 1 red if you have 3 artifacts, or cast it for free if you have 7. That's fine. I like this. I think this is a fantastic card for affinity in Modern. Ghostfire Silence is 2 and a red for an instant. This spell costs 2 less to cast if an opponent controls a multicolored spell, so then it's 1 red. It does 4 damage to any target. Yeah, like, maybe it's a cool sideboard card in Burn. I could see, like, oh yeah, it's a 1-drop if you have control a multicolored spell, and then run 4 of these, sideboard them in, and just take your opponent out. Like, that's pretty good. I would do that. Okay, here we go. Heragast Erupting Nullkite is 9 for a 6/6 a legendary creature Eldrazi Dragon with Emerge 6 and 2 red. When you cast this spell, you may exile your hand. If you do, draw 3 cards. Flying, each creature spell you cast has Emerge. The Emerge cost is equal to its mana cost. The idea with this in Modern is, like, you Emerge this guy out pretty quickly. And then you just dump your hand, draw 3 cards, and hope that you can just drop this guy for, like, one of your really good Eldrazi's that you drew into. So, otherwise, you have a 6/6 with flying, so that's fine. So, that's kind of the concept as far as I could tell. I also just like it as a Commander, both in Commander decks, because giving your cards Emerge in big card decks is good, or just as a Commander itself, it's really fun. A skittering processor is 2 and a red for a 3/3 Eldrazi drone with Devoid and Menace, and whenever you sacrifice a non-token permanent, you make a 0/1. This is good for any sack deck, any aristocrat deck. Just sack them, make a drone. You already have that in not red, so they give him black, so pretty good. Spawn Gang Commander, 3 and 2 red for a 2/2 Eldrazi Goblin with Devoid, and whenever you cast a spell, create 3/0/1 spawns, and for 1 in a colorless, you can sacrifice an Eldrazi Spawn Gang Commander, deals 2 damage to any target. That's fine. Maybe Commander likes it. That's about all I could see it being used in. Void Pouncers, 1 in a red for a 3/1 Eldrazi with Devoid and Kicker, 2 in a colorless. When Void Pouncer, if Void Pouncer was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 2/1 counters on a trample counter on it, and with haste. So yeah, like a 3/1 for 2 is fine, and then like 2, 3, 4, 5 for a 5/3 with trample and haste. That's okay. And Pauper maybe. Basking Brood Scale is broken. Devoid, adapt 1 in a red or 1 in a green. Adapt 1. Whenever 1 or more 1/1 counters are put on it, you may create a 0/1 Eldrazi spawn creature token with sacrifice this creature, add a colorless. This card goes infinite with like everything and their grandmother. Anything that can put a 1/1 counter on it, and then sack to put a 1/1 counter on something, or whenever a token comes in the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on it. It just keeps getting 1/1 counters, and you just need to play it and pay 4 or pay 2 to. So pay 4 with a card out that goes infinite with it, and you just go, and then he's infinitely big, and you have infinite little guys, so, which is infinite mana. So really gross, love it. I don't like the card though; it's creepy as heck, and that could probably be done Pauper, so I like that. Eldrazi Repurposer is 2 and a green for a 3/3 Eldrazi drone with Devoid. Whenever you cast this spell, and whenever Eldrazi Repurposer dies, create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token with sacrifice this creature. So, like, yeah, this comes in with a 0/1 and dies, giving you a 0/1. I don't love it. I think it's fine. Maybe Pauper, because it's got some card advantage there. Path of Annihilation's 3 and a green for an enchantment with Devoid. When Path of Annihilation enters the battlefield, create 2 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature tokens with sacrifice this creature, add a colorless. Eldrazi's you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. Whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 7 or greater, you gain 4 life. That last part's not the best, but I really like this card and like Commander for Eldrazi decks. Excuse me. Propagator Drone is 1 and a green for a 2/2 Eldrazi drone with Devoid. Creature tokens you control have Evolve. I like this. I think that's really cool. Giving all creature tokens Evolve is interesting. Then 3 and a green, create a 0/1 Eldrazi spawn creature token with sacrifice this creature. Add a colorless. The Evolve works like this. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under control, if it has greater power or toughness than this token, put a 1/1 counter on that token. They see this creature enter. On this token, they see this creature enter. Yeah. So the idea with Evolve is like, oh look, it enters the battlefield. These 0/1s that you're making, I mean, it's going to have more. If it at least has 1 power, it'll go up 1. And then if you play something bigger, it goes up 1, and then goes up 1. I like this in any token deck in Commander. It's just going to be very annoying to keep track of, because the new tokens have new 1/1 counters, so have fun. Sowing Myco Spawn is 3 and a green for a 3/3 Eldrazi Fungus with Devoid and Kicker 1 in a green. 1 in a colorless. Whenever you cast a spell, search your library for a land, put it on the battlefield, and shuffle. When you cast a spell, if it was kicked, exile target land. So this is a great removal. So 4 to grab a land and have a 3/3 is fine. But 6 to grab a land and exile a land to just get rid of a problematic land is really good. That's why it's seeing play, because it's a great removal for problematic lands that you just need to get rid of. Territory Caller is 4 and a green for a 7/5 Eldrazi with Devoid and Reach. Landfall. When land is battlefield under control, look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. If you don't put it into your hand, you may put it into your graveyard. Great way to fill your graveyard up in Eldrazi decks or graveyard decks in Commander. Just with landfall. And possibly card draw because of creatures. That's about all I see it in as Commander. Thief of Existence is 1, a colorless, and a green for a 3/4 Eldrazi with Devoid. When you cast this spell, exile up to 1 target creature Or exile up to one target non-creature, non-land permanent opponent controls with mana value 4 or less. If you do, Thief of Existence gains when this creature leaves the battlefield, target opponent draws a card. This card's great. Again, it's doing that same thing that another card does. I forget which card it is. But it's also an Eldrazi, so it works in Eldrazi decks. So, I like it. Warped Tusker is 7 for a 6/8 Eldrazi boar beast with reach, and whenever you cast or cycle it, you get a 0/1 Eldrazi spawn. So yeah, this is the green version of that blue card. 7 for a 6/8 with reach isn't bad, and then being able to cycle it early game is fine. Wampus Aberration is 3 and a green for a 6/6 Eldrazi beast with Devoid, and whenever you cast a spell, if Colorless wasn't spent to cast it, target opponent may put a creature card from their hand onto the battlefield. Trample. 4 for a 6/6 is fine, and as long as you can get a Colorless, not giving them that card's great. I think this is fine, but not good enough to see play in most places. Okay, the multi-color colorless spells. Titan's Vanguards, 3 a red and a green for a 5 Eldrazi with a Devoid. When you cast a spell, and whenever Titan's Vanguard attacks, put a 1/1 counter on each colorless creature you control. Trample. This is fine in colorless decks for Commander. Withering Chrysalis is 2 a red and a green for a 2/3 Eldrazi drone with Devoid, and whenever you cast a spell, you get 2/0/1 Eldrazi spawns. And it has reach. And whenever you sacrifice another Eldrazi, put a 1/1 counter on it. So this card can, first, the turn it's out, become a 4/5, which isn't bad. And you can still use that mana, so that's pretty good. Abstrus Appropriation is 2 a black and a white and a black for an instant with Devoid. Exile target non-land permanent. You may cast that card for as long as it remains exiled. And you may spend colorless mana as though it were mana of any color to cast that spell. This is kind of an interesting way to just get rid of a problematic card and then also steal it. Oh, I like that art. That's really cool. Oh yeah, it's just another art. Oh man, that's really good. I love that art. Love both arts. Yeah, like this is just a way to get rid of a card and then use it yourself. Instant speed, so that's not bad. Drowner of Truth is 5 hybrid blue, a green blue with a 7/6 Eldrazi Devoid. When you cast a spell, you get 2 spawns, and then it can also just come in as a land, which is kind of funny. It's fine. I don't really like it many places. Snapping Void Void Cries. 1 a green and a blue for a 1/3 Eldrazi turtle with Devoid. Tap, add 2 colorless. 3 and a colorless, tap, draw a card. I think this is fine in Pauper. It's ramp. 3 for 2 isn't bad. And then being able to draw a card later on isn't bad either. Like, you can use the second one of these to draw cards. Waterscape Battle Mage is 1 in a green, or 1 in a colorless for a 2/2 Eldrazi Wizard. Kicker green or kicker 1 in a blue. When you cast this card, if it was kicked for green, you exile target artifact or enchantment opponent does. When you cast a spell, if kicked with its 1 in a blue kicker, return target creature and opponent controls to its owner's hand. So for 1 in a colorless, you get a 2/2. For 1 in a colorless in green, you get to exile something. For 1 in colorless, so for 4, you get to bounce something, and for 5 total, you get to bounce and exile something. So both pretty good. I quite like it. Breaker of Creation is 6 and 2 colorless for an 8/4 Eldrazi. When you cast this spell, you gain 1 life for each colorless permanent you control. Hexproof from each color. Annihilator 2. That's fine, again, in Eldrazi decks. Just a nice big guy to hit people with. Devourer, that's hard to get rid of, too, because it's got hexproof from each color. Devourer of Destiny is 4 and 2 colorless, or 5 and 2 colors for a 6/6 Eldrazi. You may reveal this card from your opening hand. If you do, at the beginning of your first upkeep, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may put one of those cards back into the top of the library, exile the rest. Whenever you cast a spell, exile target permanent that's 1 or more colors. This card's great, and the reason why it's seeing play is because you get to look at the top 4 and exile, and put one of those hands back on the top and then exile the rest, which means you're technically, with this card, playing with, instead of a 60 card deck, you're exiling 3 cards here, so you're playing with like a 57 card deck, which isn't bad. Pretty good in that regard. And then later on, it's a 7 that can trigger a bunch of the Eldrazi stuff. Disruptor Flute is 2 generic for an artifact with flash. When into the battlefield, choose a card name. Spells with the chosen name cost 3 more to cast. Activate abilities of the sources with the chosen name can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. This card is 2 cards flipped together. The cost 3 or more and the activated abilities can't be triggered are 2 different artifacts. They put it into 1, and instead of 1 drop, they made a 2 drop and gave it flash. So it's really gross. I really like it and think it's a very good, healthy card for Modern to slow decks down. Don't play it in Commander Casual. You're being rude. Echoes of Eternity is 3 and 3 colorless for a... Ooh, I love that art. For a Kindred Enchantment Eldrazi. Kindred replace Tribal. So Kindred Enchantment Eldrazi. If a triggered ability of a colorless spell you control or another colorless permanent you control triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. When you cast a colorless spell, copy it. You may choose new targets for that copy. So what this does is like your Eldrazi's that trigger off cast. It is a triggered ability of a colorless spell you control. So you double it. If you have another colorless permanent that would trigger, you double that. Or you double that trigger. And then the colorless spell you're casting, you're getting 2 of. So like this is a Kindred Enchantment Eldrazi, so if you cast another Kindred Echoes of Eternity, you'd get 2 of them. And actually more, because if a triggered ability of a colorless spell you control or another colorless permanent you control, another, so that doesn't trigger it. But with 2 of them on the field, it's gross, because if you have 2 Echoes of Eternity on the field, one of them will see the other one and they go infinite, I think. Like you cast a colorless spell, like let's say you cast Soul Ring with 2 of them on the field. The first one says, oh, make a colorless copy. The second one says, hey, double that ability. And then the other one says, hey, make a token copy. And then this one says, hey, double that ability. I think that's what happens, and then you get 4. So, yeah, you would get 4 after having 2. So they don't go infinite, but gross. And I like that both for Commander and Modern. Eldrazi Ravager is 5 and a colorless for a 6/6 Eldrazi with Annihilator 1. Sacrifice 2 Eldrazi, return Eldrazi Ravager from your graveyard to your hand, cycling 2. I think that's fine for Eldrazi decks, but not really in Commander. I love Annihilator. I just think it's such a strong ability, so even just Annihilator 1 is gross, and I love that art. The medallions. Okay, so all the medallions are in here. I'll go over them as we run to them, but 2 generic for an artifact, green spells cost 1 generic less. Emrakul, the World Anew. This is a 12 generic for a 12/12 Eldrazi. Whenever you cast this spell, gain control of all creatures target player controls. Flying protection from spells and from permanents that were cast this turn. When Emrakul, the World Anew, leaves the battlefield, sacrifice all creatures control. Madness, pay 6 generic. So the way this works in Modern is you discard it. You pay, not 6 generic, 6 colors. You pay 6 colorless, get it out in the field early. You have this 12/12. You steal all their creatures, and you have flying and protection from all spells and permanents that were cast this turn, so they can't kill it with an instant or a sorcery, because that's a spell that was cast this turn. But they can kill it with an ability of a creature or of a permanent that's been on there longer than 1 turn. But you steal all their creatures, and then you can just swing in next turn and win the game. So really gross. I love it. Glaring Flesh Rake is 2 and a colorless for a 2/2 Eldrazi drone. Whenever you cast a colorless spell, you get a 0/1 spawn. Whenever another colorless creature enters the battlefield you control, it does 1 damage to each opponent. This card's really good. In Modern, I think you might see 4 of these being played as let's get a bunch of these drones out every time I cast a colorless spell. Let's use them to ramp out. And then, oh, look, the drones are entering the field. I'm going to just deal a lot of damage to my opponent over time. So I think that's great there. And I really like it in Commander. It's just a great ramp and burn spell. Idol of False Gods, 2 generic for a Kindred Artifact Eldrazi. Pay 1 and a colorless, tap it, create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn. Whenever another Eldrazi you control dies, put a 1 counter on Idol of the False God. As long as Idol of the False God has 8 or more 1/1 counters on it, it's a 0/0 creature in addition to others the type, and it has Annihilator 2. This is fine in Commander. Being able to make 0/1s is fine, but whenever an Eldrazi dies, so the spawns die, it gets a 1/1 counter. So if 8 of them die, all of a sudden you got this 8/8 with Annihilator 2, which is pretty cool. It that heralds the end is 1 and a colorless for a 2/2 Eldrazi drone. Colorless spells you cast with mana value 7 or greater cost 1 less to cast. Other colorless creatures you control get +1/+1. I think this will see play in Modern decks if there's a colorless deck that comes out to be. And this is also great in colorless decks in Commander. Jet Medallion is 2 generic for an artifact that makes black spells cost 1 less. Junk Diver, finally being in command or modern is interesting. So, 3 for a 1/1 artifact creature bird with flying. When it dies, return another target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. It's good. It replenishes itself. I think it'll see play in modern artifact decks. Yeah, it sees play in other artifact decks, so I think so. Kozilek's command is X and 2 colorless for Kindred Instant Eldrazi. Choose 2. Target player creates X01 colorless Eldrazi spawns. Target player scries X, then draws a card. Exile target creature with mana value X or less. Exile up to X target cards from graveyards. So if you have Tron, you have, I think it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mana. I think that's how it works. I think it's 4. I don't know. Let me double check. I was right. It's 7. You can cast this where X is, if you have 7, 5, where X is 5. So you can either make 5 tokens, scry 5 and draw a card, exile 5 or less, or exile up to 5 cards from target player's graveyard. Making 5 tokens is gross. I think this will see play in Tron because of that. Kozilek the Broken Reality is 9 generic for a 9 Eldrazi whenever you cast a spell. Up to 2 target players each manifest 2 cards from their hands. For each card manifest this way, you draw a card. Other colorless creatures you control get +3/+2. So those manifest cards you have are actually 5/4s. That buff is insane for a good Eldrazi deck. And then on top of all that, you're ripping 2 cards out of your opponent's hands. So yes, they get to choose it if it's a creature, but ripping 2 cards out of their hands is good. And then drawing 4 cards is also good. So I really like him. I think he's a great way to drop it and just finish the game in Modern. Null Elemental Blast will see play just as in the sideboard to stop or even in main deck. It's multicolor, so probably sideboard. A colorless to choose 1, counter target multicolored spell or destroy target multicolored spell. Very useful in the Void. I think, excuse me, I think it'll see play in Modern decks. Just in sideboards against like multicolored decks and stuff for colorless decks. Pearl Medallion is 2 generic for an artifact. White spells cost 1 less to cast. Ruby Medallion is 2 generic for an artifact. Red spells cost 1 less. Sapphire Medallion is 2 generic for an artifact. Blue spells cost 1 less. All of them are going to see play in like the colorless or in the monocolored decks of those of their respective color. Solar Transformer is 2 generic for an artifact. Solar Transformer enters the battlefield tapped. It enters the battlefield, you get 3 energy. Tap, add a color. Tap, pay 1, add 1 mana of any color. I think this will see play in energy decks in Commander. Ulamog the Defiler is one of the most expensive cards in the set. It's already gone down in price. But 10 generic for a 7/7 Eldrazi. When you cast a spell, target opponent exiles half their library rounded up. Ward, sacrifice 2 permanents, so no one's going to be able to really kill it. No one wants to. Ulamog the Defiler enters the battlefield with a number of 1/1 counters on it equal to the greatest mana value among cards in exile. So probably like maybe 5 or something. If you, in Commander, possibly more. It could be 10 or something. But Ulamog has Annihilator X, where X is the number of 1/1 counters on it. So if you got rid of like a 5, it's a 12/12 and has Annihilator 5. And I don't think it'll see play in Modern, but in Modern you might like get a 3, and it'll be a 10/10 with Annihilator 3, which like, cool. Exiling half their deck is probably what's going to win you the game anyway, so. Urza's Incubator in Modern is gross. I think that's so gross. It enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creature to the chosen type costs 2 less to cast, and it's 3 to cast. So this just makes... I think it's gross, but I think it's good, because I think it pushes Tribal to possibly be useful in Modern, which is what I hope this does. It also lowers the price, because, like, $30 is too much for this card. I'd rather pay 10. Vexing Bubble is 1 generic for an artifact. Whenever a player casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. Pay 1 and tap it, sacrifice Vexing Bubble, draw a card. This is going to see play all over the place in Modern, and in Vintage and Legacy, and CEDH. Just like, hey, you can't play 0 spells. Hey, you can't cast spells for free. Such a big, like, insulator, and then if you want to go off or cast a spell, just sack it and draw a card. In Legacy and Vintage, dude, you play this card turn 1, they go, I can't do anything on my turn 1. Turn 2, you just go, sack this, flood the game, win. Winter Moon is 2 generic. It's already banned in Historic. Artifact players can't untap more than 1 non-basic land during their untap step. This just, again, is a great spell to really push monocolored decks in Modern. Like, really good. And even Commander, being able to have this card where, like, hey, my lands come still untap. Yours don't, because you're playing non-basics. Warren Power Stone in Modern, I think, will only really see play in Amulets decks. Because 3 generic for an artifact, it enters the battle with tap for 2 colorless, but you can have it come untap if you have Amulet on the field. That's my concept. It's not like a popper. Cool. Okay, that is the colorless cards. The next time will be the last video for the main set, which is lands. Let me know what your favorite colorless spell is in this set. Let me know what you think the best one is that was released. Other than that, tell me what your favorite Modern deck is down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a great day. Peace.